Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode, the ninth episode of Sunday Chats. It is me, your host, George Cummings, and today's episode is mainly going to be about one thing and one thing only. From Monday to Friday, I've been, if you're unaware, in and out of London every day because I've been going to a law summer school to decide basically whether I actually want to be doing something to do with law. And I'm mainly going to talk this episode a bit about the experience itself, but sort of where I'm planning on going in light of it. So it's mainly going to be sort of how does it influence my ideas? Do I want some sort of sudden career change or not? And so that sort of thing. But I'm also going to sort of end off with a question towards you guys. It's like a personal opinion question, which hopefully people will say something in the comments. Um, so yeah, and it's related to stuff I studied. So there's going to be some stuff related to what I studied, but it's mainly going to be, again, a bit more of a personal one. My thoughts on something that's happening in my own life, as opposed to my thoughts on X thing in the government. Um, I know that there is a lot of X thing in the government going on right now. There's like a sense, like a um, over 18 website thing. I know some of the details of that, but I've not studied the policy too closely, so I can't say much about it. If you want me to talk about that, because a lot of the people that I know are talking about that. So if you want me to talk about that in the next episode, I will. I'll happily do a bit more research and give my 2 cents. Otherwise, I would just like to focus mainly this week on law school. That being said, let's just jump straight in. So the first thing that I'd like to say is that I have, over the last few months, come to the realization that I really would not like to be an MP. And that sounds, I am aware that I probably look and sound like such a Tory twat at the moment, but those who know me personally, who goes to the same school as me, will know that I'd strongly considered being an MP. In fact, it was what I wanted to do very much between the ages of, I want to say, 14 and 16. And this was mainly because I was quite a politically minded person. My mother, God bless her, has always encouraged me not to be some sort of rebel, but to always approach rules and authority with a healthy level of skepticism. And that's developed into me questioning rules and things, and that's developed into me questioning the ideal government, and that developed into me being a rather interested little political enthusiast when I was younger. And I don't think that I'm not politically enthusiastic. I think that the fact that I'm making a channel, I've made a channel in part dedicated to my political views, is a testament that I have some interest. But truth be told, being an MP doesn't seem all like what I thought it was a few years ago. I am not a maths guy. I know I said that before, I said that recently. I think it was in response to like my thoughts on like the Pelican program. Like I mentioned, I wouldn't want to go to Oxford or Cambridge, and because I'm not a maths guy, I do not really have that great an appeal in economics. Now it's not boring. There's definitely interesting parts of it, but I'm definitely not someone who's very focused on economics. And so I've had the realization, possibly over the last 6 months to a year ago, or for the last 6 months to a year or so, that if I were to be an MP, I would have to do a lot to do with economics. I'd have to do a lot to do with numbers, and that's not what I'm interested in. And so, yes, the last year or so, there has been a process of me realizing, actually, first of all, MPs have much less influence, I think, these days on social policy because, for better or worse, the prevailing attitude. Although, I mean, mine's with the recent online protection or whatever act. Maybe that's going back, but it does feel like that over the last few decades, compared to like most of British history, the prevailing attitude has been, if it's not harmful, the government should touch it with a 10-foot pole regarding social things. it swings and roundabouts. I am realizing, as I was saying this actually, that there has been a lot recently, um, but the large majority of an MP's job seems to be around sort of economics and things. Truth be told, I don't know. I don't know. And maybe I will have a complete, dare I borrow the phrase, U-turn in another year or so and realise that actually I am very interested in a political career. But a lot of being an MP just seems to be very much not what I expected. A lot of it's administrative, a lot of it's statistics based, a lot of it's economics based. And that was sort of the push factor for me, is that it wouldn't just be me sitting there and talking about my political views all day long. There's more to it than that. Granted, it's something I need to look into more, but I have been slowly getting this decision. And also, let's talk about like the realism point. Like, it's great to sit there and say, "Oh, I want to be an MP," but like, will I be able to be an MP? I don't know if you've noticed, but there's only a small amount of people in the country are MPs. 650 to be precise, I believe. Maybe it's changed. Lord knows, it seems to change all the time. But anyway, yeah, it's not really that sort of thing where I can just pick up the job and do it. So there's that too. I have been getting just generally, I've been getting very disillusioned with the idea of being an MP. Some of you who don't agree with my political views are probably punching your fists in the air at the moment, but that's just the honest truth. And today, well no, over the last week or so, that's sort of been confirmed for me, because as it stands, I am very much sold on the idea of becoming a barrister. Probably going to take a quick drink break, but then I will explain why, because again, this is where the bit about law summer school actually ties in. The growing out of favour of being an MP thing with more context, and why I'm being pushed away from that, because I know a lot of people know when I said I wanted to do that, and so I figured I'd explain that first. But yes, after a quick drink break, I will explain why I have decided on being a barrister. Okay, another thing I wanted to say as well is that while I'm possibly going to still study politics at university, the thing that I realised is that a lot of the politics I'm interested in is the political theory and like the political philosophy, which I sort of get under philosophy anyway. That being said, I really do want to be a barrister, and the reason why is because, well, I quite enjoy public speaking. I have developed quite an interest in criminal law, and it seems like another opportunity to have a job that there is a potential for making a positive difference. I think to say that all MPs make a positive difference is, especially in the last year or so, a stretch. But there's the potential there for a sort of job with real power and real potential to sort of bring something good into the world. And I think that a job as a barrister very much has that same opportunity to it, while also being sort of, I wouldn't want to, I don't have anything against NGOs, but sort of being like an NGO volunteer worker just doesn't seem very much like my cup of tea. If nothing else, I'm not a very practical man. I don't see myself especially like more capable than your average Joe by any means at sort of distributing necessary goods or anything like that. But I have realised, and the thing that really sealed the deal for me is the law school week that I just went to, because it made me realise, first of all, I do find criminal law really interesting. I was always, well not always, I've been very fascinated for a short while, a year, maybe two, with the idea of criminal law. But I had not really dived that deep into it. And in the last week, I have really gone into criminal law and a bit of family law, and I can confirm that it is interesting. Interestingly enough, just like politics, just like philosophy, law has plenty of room for debate. So it's still satisfied. Oh, that's the other thing I like. I don't just like public speaking, I like debating people. I've not done it much. I'm not an experienced debater. I don't go to a debate club. But, I like a bit of back and forth. It's always a bit of fun, as far as I'm concerned, at least when it's done somewhat respectfully. and with the understanding that at least with philosophy you're not going to cover any ground that hasn't been covered already, really. But my views on the purpose of philosophical debate can be approached in a different episode. Send me a comment if you care about my views on debating and what it's really for. Being a barrister, though, we had a mock trial, and in fact we had it yesterday, and I must admit I fumbled. I claim to be interested in public speaking. Sometimes, though, I do fumble. And yesterday, I must admit, in terms of the delivery of my speech, I fumbled rather heavily. I got very nervous, I got very in my own head. Our team was generally getting more or less thrashed. And so I just was far too nervous going in. However, I really enjoyed preparing for the mock trial. I really enjoyed writing my speech, and I feel like I know that I enjoy public speaking because I've done speeches, and because I did a debate with my peers on Monday on whether there should be AI judges, and I feel like I did really well in that. So, without bouts of nervousness, I sort of hit all of the check marks for a barrister. And I know you might be thinking, well, you also need to write legal opinions as a barrister. Yes, but I want to go into criminal law, so it would be a lot less writing legal opinions and a lot more being in court. And it made me realise, the last few days have made me realise, I can see myself sort of being in court every day. And so I just realised I forgot to mention something at the start, but so be it, I'll approach it at the end. And if I don't, I'll sod it. Now that I've sort of derailed so heavily, the reason why the lighting is different is because the light that's usually over there, has stopped working. It's flickering, so you don't get the nice yellow sort of atmospheric light you usually would. You get the harsh white one instead that makes me look significantly uglier. But that's okay. Who needs a good, public image, especially now that I don't want to be an MP anyway. But no, I can see myself being in court very often. I find as well, a lot of people sort of will criticise the law and the legal profession as having all of these very weird, sort of archaic rules, and sort of the laws are so, like people say, oh, the law in this country is so sort of counterintuitive and it's just really odd, and you've got to like learn all these stuck up sort of legal principles, and I must admit, to an extent, like it's a bastardization of the truth, but from what I've seen over the last few days, there does seem to be a fair element of weird and wacky rules in court proceeding, in like the application of the law itself. There is a lot of just weird shite. But to be honest, I have sort of fallen in love with it. Because while it's odd, it's got its reasoning to it. And so it very much scratches the same itch that philosophy does, of sometimes having these very counterintuitive suggestions that actually can be really logically explained. And so, also, as a barrister, again, I'm not, probably not the most practical and hard-headed man of the world. I very much, the politics that I enjoy is political theory. Philosophy, of course, is very theory-based. The barristers are the ones that deal with the most sort of legal theory anyway. It's the most sort of, it's to do with the legal principles, it's to do with rulings, it's not to do with what's called matter of fact as much as barristers deal with matters of law. Matters of fact being whether or not I reached for a knife before you punched me, and a matter of law being whether or not that circumstance would make it legitimate self-defense. To use the example in the mock trial. By the way, if anyone's wondering, we wanted to get the guy with GBH with intent. We got him for GBH without intent, which comparatively the sentence is like sod all. So we didn't really win. We got a conviction, but he didn't even get a proper sentence. He got us suspended. So, yeah, oopsie daisy. But it was still very fun regardless. And the fact that, like, I generally hate losing, and I did, especially because I originally thought it was going to be a non-guilty verdict, and I was miserable in that time. But looking back, like, it's been just 24 hours. It's been like just 24, 28 hours. Looking back, at time of recording, it's like 20 to 10 currently as I'm speaking, by the way, on the Friday. Even with that in mind, I just, like, looking back, I think even if it was a non-guilty verdict, I loved preparing for that trial. I bottled my bit, but I know that I love public speaking. I loved learning all of the information about the cases and the principles that for self-defense. With practice, I find it very hard to see what I wouldn't enjoy about being a barrister. Um, the one thing that would sort of suck is that people's lives are on the line. But my other plan was to be an MP, so I don't really. I mean, it's not really working in the same way, but mind, it's not as though either of any of the jobs really that I've have an interest in. It's not as if they don't have a large responsibility upon their shoulders. That's hardly new. And I mean, for goodness sakes, if you want your job to mean something, you've got to come with the, it's quite hard to have a job that is both incredibly impactful and then you can sleep well at night if you muck up. It's like all of these all of these jobs, like being a doctor, for example. Yeah, it's very nice that you're saving people, but then if you balls it up and someone dies, it's and that is something you've got to accept if you want a job that's meaningful or important. As far as I'm concerned, as an unemployed 17-year-old who hasn't finished his A-levels, so take my word as gospel. Anyway, in short, sod politics, honestly, which might absolutely come back to bite. See, the problem about this being public is I worry that in 5 years I will decide to be an MP, and then the video of me saying sod politics, I know I don't want to be an MP, it looks boring, comes out, and my chances are dashed. But yeah, that's where I stand right now, and I want to, I guess, hear your guys' thoughts. Not on necessarily whether I should be an MP or not, but more just, like, I don't know who's considered being a barrister. I don't know how many people that are looking into getting into law I have in my audience, but I don't know. It's not somewhere I expected going. Actually, I really disliked the idea of being a lawyer when I was younger, because I couldn't accept fighting for a side that I disagreed with. And I think that A, it's quite naive of me to expect anything different as an MP, given that party whips are a thing. And B, I think that, well, I don't want to say, like, my spine has been broken by the way that the world is or anything like that, but I have come to the realization that sometimes you've got to suck things up and it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And so that also is probably something that's stopping me a lot less now. And also, like, the idea that hopefully the truth will win out. I've actually become more skeptical of that coming away from law school, because I've realised how much of the law is up to interpretation and persuasion. And the answer is quite a lot. I'll warn you all now, it's nowhere near as bloody consistent as it looks from the outside. Not that I'm in it, but you know what I mean. That's where I am. I don't really know what sort of feedback I'm expecting from you guys this time, but I just wanted to make something to sort of, I mean, I don't want this to come across as disrespectful, but this is just as much for me as it is for you. The hope is that I can look at this in the future and see how I felt, at least about the things that I wanted to say to the public. And so yeah, that's where I stand. Even though there's some things that I need to work on, like not getting nervous at public speaking, I'm quite set on the barrister path. I'm quite set on the law path. So it's an interesting development. Just gonna pause, take a drink, and I'll share one more thing with you all before, or hopefully you go to bed, given that if you're watching this in real time, it's 9:20. Okay, so we're back. Sorry, I wanted to take a short break instead of just having a drink break, I decided. Um, so I'm going to end off with a little bit of a question. I'm hoping I'll get some interaction for this one, especially because the video is looking like it'll be shorter than usual. Hopefully more people will click. Hopefully more people will watch. Hopefully I'll at least get a couple people answering the question. If anyone gives any good answers, I'll address them next video. Otherwise, what do you think? And I ask because this sounds like a philosophy question or a politics question, but this is also something you do in law. So there is this sort of subjective, at least in academic law, studying law, there is this sort of more subjective and more debating nature to law too. Hence my interest. What do you think makes a law legitimate? That's my question to you. It's very simple. I'll give you a sort of guiding first thing to go. Like a, don't know what that was supposed to mean, but I will give you sort of a pointer as to one of two potential directions. There is what's called natural law theory and positivism. And these are two sort of main ideas in jurisprudence, which is philosophy of law. So, natural law, they're sort of opposites. Natural law is the idea that laws are sort of legitimized or taken out of moral principles. And so we use our moral principles to make laws. The idea sort of comes from Aristotle before him, but I'd imagine mainly it's rooted in the West in the thinking of Aquinas, with the idea of he's got what's called natural law theory. But natural law is the idea that through some methods, such as like God, or sort of, if you have a more Kantian perspective, sort of unchangeable moral principles, or just, you know, what is or isn't natural is sometimes a way it can be done, but that's sort of a bit, you know, it will usually be from a moral principle or some sort of divine command. Sometimes it's about inherently what's in human nature. So you've got these sort of ideas of like intuition as well. Consciousness could link to what's sort of natural law, because it's sort of, this is a natural thing to do. So for example, people naturally feel an inclination to look after their children, which is why we have made these sort of look after your children laws. You know, child neglect is a crime. I just thought you should know. So that's one direction you could go in. And then the implication there is that a law that doesn't sort of have some sort of moral or ethical grounding doesn't really exist as a law at all. Like, it's not really a legitimate law. And you can, that is a sort of what a lot of like human rights theory is founded on. It's this idea that you have laws that are made out of these sort of inalienable rights, such as the right to freedom of expression, or the right to the feeling of safety, and like this is like something that is morally good, and therefore we've built laws off of this, and that's where you get like dictatorships and regimes that are sort of considered to be illegitimate because they don't abide by these moral principles. But then it also leaves the awkward question of things such as so like specific regulatory things. So for an example, one thing that just stands to like sticks in my head is and this has come out of nowhere, so this is not like a perfect argument, but you know, for example, the laws for like historically listed buildings, like yes, you could say, you know, there's a moral duty to protect culture, but to what extent? You know, it seems that if you have like a set of key principles, such as, you know, to take Aquinas for example, order, society, protection of the innocent, reproduction, I should know the rest. I do A-level RS. That's really shameful. I know off the top of my head. It's 10 o'clock. Leave me alone. That's going to be bugging me for the rest of this episode. But okay, so you have a set of moral principles. It seems like maybe there are laws that don't necessarily abide by that though. A lot of sort of regulatory laws and things, a lot of sort of procedures just don't seem to really be grounded in that like a moral thing as much as a practical thing. Um, so that's natural law, and I've sort of given arguments, like a bit of an argument for each side as to why it's good and bad, but let me know what you think of that. And then there's what's called legal positivism, which is the idea that a law is just a rule that's passed down by like an institution that's in power, so namely the government. And it's the idea that actually what makes a law is just the fact that it's backed up by the state. And you have in a broader sense the idea that, for example, school rules are laws, not in the sense that the police will arrest you if you don't follow them, but in the sense that it is an institution that is in power that has sort of created this rule that you have to abide by that makes it a law. And so those are really the two main schools of thought in jurisprudence. So that's sort of a direction to get you started in. But if you're watching, I guess the last thing I would say before ending this off tonight, I have actually got a short one tonight. It's under half an hour. It's the which makes it better than the last two. Yeah. What do you think makes a law legitimate? That's sort of an example of the sort of thing that we did in jurisprudence and the sort of thing that we did in just you will do if you study law. The more philosophical stuff, because that's what I'm interested in, but I want to hear your takes. Please, if you're watching, if you can be bothered, I pray you can be bothered, because otherwise it'll be so boring. It would just be boring if you don't, so just do. Please. Sorry, I'm tired. What makes a law legitimate? What do you think? And there's obviously the right or wrong answer, but I don't know it. None of us fucking know it. So go out there, say it with your full chest. I'm not going to be a dick about it if there's like an easy criticism of your answer, because at the end of the day I want you guys to be interested in this, because I find it interesting and I want people to talk with about it. So I'm not going to belittle you if you're wrong or if I disagree with you. So yeah, be brave, put your opinion in the comments. What makes a law legitimate? What makes it a law? On that note, thank you for listening to my ramblings, as always. And yeah, I've not really got much to say other than, I guess, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Bye.